It's the Kenneth L. Johnson Show live on WPPM 106.5 Philadelphia. You know what it is. I've been telling people all week that this is a special day. This is a special day on the Kenneth L. Johnson Show, and it's always a special day when you have a guest like the one we have with us today. So as you can see, I don't know if it's to my right or to my left. I guess it's to my right.
It's probably to your
on the screen, yes.
Yes, my skin looks good. Wow.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. This is what we're going to do.
I'm gonna be professional.
This is no. We're just gonna do what we do with the KR. All right, so like when people say this person needs no introduction, that's what I'm talking about right there. Welcome to the Kenneth L. Johnson Show. This is the Executive Leadership Series where we engage leaders shaping the future of work, culture, and performance. Today we are focused on developing the next generation of leaders. And I'm joined by Kimberly S. Reed, culture futurist, founder of Reed Development Group, and a trusted advisor to C-suite leaders and boards, helping organizations embed culture, belonging, and performance into how they lead and grow. Kimberly, welcome to the Executive Leadership Series.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you so much. You know what? This is a joy for me to sit with you because it's been almost, I started Redevelopment Group, so 19 years. So it's been at least 15 since you and I have sat in this studio and kind of just chatted about everything. So I am honored and so happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me to share.
You know we're super happy to have you here as well. That's what we do. We bring the best in the world to the stage.
You chose me. Wow. All right.
Yeah, who else? Who else could we possibly choose?
Oh my goodness, I'm multitasking, so that's why I'm looking down a little bit. I told you, we have as our parents age, this is all about leadership, right? Because we're talking about leadership, we're talking about culture, we're talking about the workforce, and many of us, as we get older, what happens? Our parents get older.
Yeah.
And so I'm working through a little not an issue, but a good thing with my dad. So I just keep looking down. So don't worry.
Listen. You explained the situation prior, so I'm familiar and I know how that goes. We're Kim. All right. So see, this is what we do. We get completely off the trail.
I know.
So we're in that group of people now where, if you're fortunate enough to have a parent here or both parents here, I know that your mother is no longer with us. My father is no longer with us. And we've had those conversations, but I know your dad is here and thriving and doing his thing. So how privileged are we to still have parents? My mother is here doing her thing. She's probably out in the yard. Really? My mother's 81.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, she's probably out in the yard now.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
My dad too, on the riding lawnmower. That's why and texting me at the same time to talk about
I love
when
it.
the contractor is coming.
All right. So. I brought you here because I really want to talk about leadership. This is the Executive Leadership Series on the Kenneth L. Johnson Show. And we've been doing this. This is week 3. So you're our third guest expert to come in and speak about executive leadership. And Kim, I'm seeing some things out here, and I want to know from your perspective, what distinguishes organizations that are getting it right as far as leadership's concerned?
So you're saying what? Okay, so that's a loaded question.
100%.
You're saying who's getting it right?
Yes.
The one of the measurements of understanding if leaders are getting it right is culture.
Okay.
Right? And what do I mean by that? Culture thrives, people thrive, businesses thrive, in that order.
Yeah.
And so we know when leaders are missing the mark because one of two things, or one of many things. Culture is one, empathy is the other, and self-awareness, right? Those are two of the top characteristics in today's CEOs.
Let's stay here for a second. Let's talk a little bit about emotional intelligence and how that comes into play when we're talking about leadership. I know you mentioned empathy, and every time I hear empathy, I think along those lines about, leaders that are different in today's world because they're a little more tapped in emotionally. They're understanding that people are raising or caregivers for parents, have children, all of these things that they're bringing to work. The stress of just, is it AI? Is it layoffs? So much stuff going on. How are leaders being effective in bridging that gap for emotional intelligence?
So when in the work we do, it's two. It's emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence, right? And so you say, what's the difference between one is mind, other is body,
Okay.
right? Workforce. So when you say about emotional intelligence with CEOs, again, it goes back to my earlier statement, Ken, is that when a company is navigating the terrain, right, and navigating in the terrain in the right way. And what do I mean the right way? Meaning that their people are somewhat happy, people feel like they belong, that the culture is robust. So when you say lack of empathy, that means oftentimes how people handle conflict, right? Because in self-awareness, right? So those are emotional intelligence behaviors that leaders, not just CEOs, leaders need. So organizations that really are getting this right, they make those critical shifts.
Okay.
They're tapped in and it's treated as infrastructure, an organizational culture. It goes back to that. I can't say that enough.
Infrastructure is everything, and systems and the process and accountability and people knowing what it is that they're supposed to be doing and kind of where those markers are. What are you seeing, the organizations that are doing a good job of that? When does that start? Does that start when people come in the door?
No, oftentimes it does not. But when you say, see, Ken, we got to talk about today's organization, right? Because a lot of times organizations are still stuck in pre-stuff. And what do I mean pre-stuff, right? So, we had a shift in our nation in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
We had a shift 5 years before that with COVID, and other aspects of our work, i.e. diversity.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think organizational leadership, right? Again, it makes shifts when there's terrain, when there's conflict. Look, for example, in the news lately. LinkedIn news, I would say.
Yes, all right. Totally different news.
Totally
but
different news. One of the top 5 financial services firms, I used to work for 2 of them. One of them just laid off 30,000 people. Now, people say, oh my God, is it a lot? Yes, because all of those people have to go back into the workforce. But they have 100,000 plus employees, right? So the impact is felt, but not really. So I think if we summed up this question, you really see it, Ken, in decision making and how people, again, navigate terrain, right? Also, our consumers are talking, right? If it's a B2C company, consumers are talking because they're looking at the top layer of an organization. They are looking at the culture. And when employees come into that culture, they feel it in the interview process, not even when they hit the door as a hire. And so those are critical decisions that people are making or not making, Ken, because our young people, they want to be in a culture that has advocacy.
Yes.
Older people want to be like me, want stability.
All right, so let's talk about this. Once you're getting the stability and then people wanting advocacy, and I'm thinking mentorship along those lines, right? So what does impactful mentorship look like when it's truly embedded into an organization's culture?
Yeah, that's a great question because, mentorship, sponsorship, another show for another day, but mentorship is critical. Mentorship is truly embedded, and it stops being this episode and becomes systemic. It's not necessarily based on who you know. It's not. It is how an organization is built. And again, it goes back to how it grows in its people. So, I have 15 mentors.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, probably more.
Probably more, right?
For sure. And they're all different shades.
Sure.
Right? All different tenures, right? Because I want to know from people what mentorship really is. And I will tell you, impactful mentorship creates access, advocacy, and accountability. So let's say that, right? Because I think people who are listening, Ken, who are sitting in their office or sitting in their car or sitting at home, right? And they're they're struggling in their culture. So one of the things that you do want to do, if you see someone, if you've talked with someone, if you've met with someone multiples of times, ask them, talk to them about their journeys, right? Because a lot of times we don't ask. And when I say we, and if you want me to be really real,
yes,
okay,
that's what we want.
And this is statistics. Harvard Business Review did a study on this many moons ago, and I believe it is still true. It's African Americans, we have the hardest time in developing relationships in corporate and mentorship. And I will tell you, because it's not based on who you know, it's built into how the organization grows its people. And remember those three things I talked about. Impactful mentorship does three things: access, advocacy, and accountability.
Access, advocacy, and accountability.
Yeah.
Access, advocacy, and accountability.
That's right.
You know, those are three uniquely different things, but I can see how they would go together. I can see the through line in that, especially if we're talking about how we develop leaders.
That's right. So I will tell you. So it really means that leaders aren't just advising, right? So a mentor is not just advising. They're opening doors. It all depends on the dynamic of that relationship, right? Because you think back to your mentors as well, right? I think back to mine. I know how many opened the door for me when I started Redevelopment Group almost 19 years ago now. I would not have the client base or the experiences or the strategic partnerships if it wasn't for those key mentors and who are opening doors. That's access, right? And also sharing power. That's something also we
All right, so hold on. Let's stay here for a second. Tell me about this sharing power thing.
Listen, there's two things. I always ask people this. Do you want power or influence? Or is leadership both power and influence, right? And so I want influence. I could care less about the title. I can care less about the power. I want influence because influence is access. Influence opens doors. And that is sharing real power, is when you are sharing your influence. And here's the key, Ken, that you're actively positioning other people for opportunities. That's influence, not power. But you share power. How's how you share it? You share power when, for example, you're in an organization and you're saying to your teams, okay, we are all, if this ship goes down,
yes,
all of us are going down and I'm going down with you. That's sharing power.
That's sharing power. Yeah. And accountability.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then subsequently on the other end, you win and you're sharing access.
So it's so funny. So Titan 100.
Okay.
Titan, for those that don't know what
Yes.
Titan 100 is, Titan 100 is a national body, a consortium, I should say, of CEOs from around the U.S. And it's an invitee.
Okay.
They select the best of the best, right? The best of the best CEOs and executives in that particular city. Philadelphia, for example, has Titan, Philadelphia 100.
Gotcha.
And so and then Dallas, if you are listening to us and you are killing it, right, as an executive, or you are a founder of an organization and your company is killing it, look up Titan 100. And I will guarantee you there is something special for you there. And so the reason why I bring that up, Ken, is because access. How many people know about Titan 100?
Yeah.
You know about it because you know so many.
I think I first heard about it seeing your involvement. Oh, I really do. Okay. I really believe that. Yeah.
Well, see, that's so once you take a look at it and you say, hey, Kim, I want to know more about that. That's access. And see, here's the other thing that's really, really important. It's not just about comfort. It's about challenge. And so one of the things that is very challenging for people with mentorship is being uncomfortable, because you have to step out of yourself.
What do you mean by that? Is this the mentor or the mentee?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Listen, because mentors.
No, I'm having some mic challenges. So let me get this
okay.
together. All right,
that's
we better.
okay.
We
you
good.
know, listen, the best mentors just don't affirm you, right? They don't. They stretch you, right? They sponsor you, and sometimes they disrupt how you see yourself and how you're doing business.
Okay.
That's what I mean by uncomfortable, right? Sometimes a mentor. I will tell you, this is the perfect story. Harold Epps.
Yes.
Philadelphia knows him.
Yes,
well.
We do. Yes,
he
we
is
do.
one of the kings of business in this city.
He is indeed. And shout out to Kathy as well.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And their daughter just became Delta this weekend.
Okay.
So I know Kathy's helping with Delta Sigma Theta. Harold Epps, this was probably I've been in business almost 19 years ago. So this was 18 and a half years ago.
Okay.
He was at PRWT.
Yes.
He was a CEO. And we were sitting in his office, and matter of fact, the conference room, and we were having one of our first mentor sessions. And I was in tears, literally, because it's been a year, and I know all of these people of power in Philadelphia, and I haven't had one door open to do business with some of the big organizations here in Philadelphia.
I have a question for you. Were you connected with Harold through the program that the chamber runs, or was that a personal relationship?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
Yeah.
It became personal.
Gotcha.
So I was a part of CEO Access Network.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Okay,
Yes.
And I was, and it was such a wonderful program, and it ignited so many great opportunities. And one is Harold Epps.
Sure.
So, also if you want to talk about putting tools in your toolbox for today, because I know this series is going to be amazing. And so I want someone to put this in their toolbox. Ask the questions. Tap on people. Utilize these organizations like Chambers, like Titan 100, that have people that have done the work successfully, and ask them how they became successful.
That's always been an important component to a successful person, not alone creating a successful business. And now in 2026, there are so many ways to be non-intrusive, but to tap in to those networks, because you literally can reach out to anyone in the world.
Absolutely.
And pitch.
Yes.
Before, you had to find these people out here in the streets, and that was not
So
an easy
easy now.
thing. But now it's so much easier.
Social media made it easier. And Ken, let me just say this part about the story, which is very important. So funny. So, I was in tears, etc. We were sitting at the conference room. He was sitting at one end, and I was sitting at the other. So let me paint that picture, right? So I was just talking and I'm whining a little bit. Why, I know all these people. Why aren't I doing any business? They know I have a great track record.
Sure.
Great talent. I mean, my gosh. So he said, Kim, he slid this tissue box all the way down the end of the conference room. And he said, all right, get your SHIT together, get it all together. And here's what I'm going to tell you. There are two types of people in the world, influencers and people who have power. He said, you're not talking to any influencers. You keep saying this word power. And it was a brutal conversation, right? But I tell him to this day, had he not had that type of conversation with me to make me uncomfortable, to make me think about myself, to make me think about power and influence from a different dynamic, I would not be the businesswoman I am today.
Great leadership story. I really appreciate it. So, Kim, listen, you speak a lot about culture being a driver of performance. So kind of back me into this. How does culture shape the way future leaders are developed and prepared to lead?
Culture is a training ground for leadership.
I love that quote. And it's true.
Yeah, it is. Culture is a training ground for leadership. But so whether organizations are intentional about it, now that's a whole other conversation, right? But every environment, in my opinion, is developing leaders, right? Or you would hope so. So
Yes.
The question is, what kind of leaders? And one of the unfortunate pieces, I will say, because there's always I wrote a book on optimism, so I'm clearly optimistic. But what I will say is that it's unfortunate that some people do not have opportunities to lead P&Ls, and that's what makes the difference of a leader and a manager.
Just had this conversation with someone.
See?
Such an important thing.
It is.
Just had this conversation. All right, so let's move to this. When you think about high potential talent, right, what signals tell you that someone is truly ready for the next level of leadership? I know you talked about P&L responsibility. Are there any other things that you look at and that you see organizations looking at when they tap that next level of leadership?
Yeah. So I'll say a couple of things about that. One, if your culture avoids accountability, your leaders will too. And we're seeing that a lot.
Well, it seems like the leaders would be, the culture is driving leadership, and the leaders are okay,
So
I'm
here's
with
the
you.
part two to that.
Yes.
If your culture, and I jotted some notes down about this because I think it's important around culture. If your culture rewards silence, your leaders will hesitate in moments that require courage. And we are in a terrain right now. Most organizations are, Ken. And it is so important because when culture is aligned with performance, then you have leaders, Ken, that are agile, right? You have, it reinforces trust, clarity, and belonging. And when you create leaders who can actually lead people,
Money.
wow, but not just manage outcomes, right? So that's why I talked about P&L first, right? Because P&L, we know, that's the big deal, right? Because that's money, that's revenue,
For sure.
that's performance, and that's right now how people are measuring performance.
That's how people are measuring performance solely.
That's it. So
Right.
you can't talk about how the business can make money. That's why when I say this to my diversity leaders specifically, you can't just talk about diversity anymore. You just can't talk about culture and belonging. You've got to talk about how does it connect to how the business makes money, because ultimately it has to be in the DNA of an organization.
Yeah, and it has to be deeper than, for years people leaned on diverse teams, are more productive than non-diverse teams and all of that. But you probably need to drill down and be a little more specific about your case point and your scenarios. All right. So, Kim, for executives listening right now, what is one strategic shift that they can make to strengthen their leadership pipeline immediately?
You got to look at it first. No, and it's so funny because people listen. Our clients ask me that question often. And I said, if you're not ready to look at history and current, then we can't talk about the future. We just can't. There is no conversation.
Sure.
So if the culture, I talk about culture determines whether we can produce or not, really. And so what I say to an executive who is listening, you have to do an assessment of today before you can even have a conversation about tomorrow.
Sure.
But if you want to have the conversation about tomorrow, it's not just about external talent. You got to look at what's inward. See, remember, everything starts in leadership. Everything starts with us.
There's a gentleman, and shout out to him, TEDx Harlem speaker. Hold on, I'm doing the TEDx Harlem thing today.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even thinking about positioning this, but Paolo Giordano, and he built this simulator, but it was based on diversity in an organization, but it was just men to women, right? And the simulator literally showed you how if you were off in the initial building of the business, it never auto-corrected. It just kept getting a little less diverse, men to women.
Right.
And what I'm hearing you speak about, but just a culture of an organization, because that's a thing, and it grows as well, or it doesn't grow. or it becomes monolithic, right?
That's right.
So you just, you have to be intentional. You have to look at it.
And we don't want to.
We don't want to.
Ken, if anything, here's some other, I'm going to ask some questions so people can put tools in their toolbox. I'm going to ask questions to you in a moment. But what I will say this, one of the key components to what this is about is culture.
Yeah.
It is culture, because that is a result of leadership.
So when you think about leadership pillars, you have culture there.
Mm-hmm.
What else are we talking?
Empathy, self-awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't self-awareness is the number one characteristic that CEOs. I write for CEO Magazine, and one of the things that is extremely important that I talk about is that your emotional intelligence. It's people are smart, right? People are smart. People figure it out. You have AI. You don't need to figure it out.
Yeah, you
right?
don't even need to figure it out.
But you
anymore.
need emotional intelligence to be exceptional. You can use AI to think that you're going to be extraordinary, but to be exceptional, you need self-awareness. So here's something else I want to say this. The strongest signal, really, and it's so funny because I'm looking at the opposite of what I'm going to say, is really how someone shows up, right? When things are with that terrain I talk about, uncomfortable or high stakes. So here's what I want executives who are listening to you know, or ask themselves right now, rhetorical. Do you take ownership beyond the role of a leader, CEO, mentor, sponsor, right?
Yeah.
Second is, I would say, do you, or can you make decisions? Here comes power and influence, right? Without having all the answers. Can you make decisions? Executives out there, can you make decisions without having all the answers? I know that I've had to do so in 2025 going into 2026. But here's the caveat to that. Do people trust them? Right? Do people trust them even when it's hard? So I want executives to ask themselves, because that assessment you talked about from the Harlan TEDx speaker is just absolutely spot on. But I want to simplify that a little bit more. So someone who's writing at their desk, those three questions.
It's the Kenneth L. Johnson Show live on WPPM 106.5. We are here with Kimberly S. Reed, founder of the Reed Development Group. Listen, leadership development is not defined by intention, but by execution. Organizations that build strong leadership pipelines are deliberate in how they mentor, intentional in how they identify talent, and disciplined in creating cultures where leadership can thrive. When done right, leadership development becomes a competitive advantage, not just an internal initiative. So happy to have you here today, Kimberly S. Reed. Listen, how can our listeners stay in touch with you and your work?
Wait, are we done?
We're done. We got about a minute to go.
I couldn't even leave a final thought. Okay, all right. So how you can get in touch with LinkedIn. Hey, if you're on LinkedIn, it's Kimberly S. Reed. And also Reed Development Group. I'm on social media. I'm easy. So it's Kimberly S. Reed for all of my social media handles.
She's a great IG follow too. Give him the IG.
No, I'm bad at IG. I'm best at LinkedIn and Facebook.
I
got to get
on
better
LinkedIn
with IG.
heavy. I see you on LinkedIn heavy.
I got to get better. But here's the thing. Can I just say this? In the next era, right? In the next era, the difference between organizations that scale, you know what? And those that stall. So in this next era, it's going to be the organizations and the leaders that thrive, right? That scale, and those that stall. We're going to know the outcome.
We're going to know the outcome. We're here. This is the Kenneth L. Johnson Show Executive Leadership Series. I want to thank Kimberly S. Reed for sharing perspective and strategy on developing the next generation of leaders. I told you this is what she does. I told you. The opportunity is now to take insight and turn it into action. I'm trying to tell everyone, join us
Yes.
next time as we continue to engage leaders who are shaping what's next. We're going to take a break from the leadership series next week because we have Felicia Brown from AARP coming in to talk about working with experienced executives. It's the Kenneth L. Johnson Show live on WPPM 106.5 Philadelphia.